Last week, I went through my 10 favorite games of 2015, but this year has been such a fantastic year for video games that I decided it'd be best to quickly run through some of my favorite games that didn't manage to make the cut. These are all still great games, but for one reason or another, they managed to just miss being in my top 10. So this week, we're going to look at 10 more games, my personal honorable mentions, in no particular order. Technically speaking, Tales from the Borderlands started last year, which made me a bit wary of including it in the top 10 list for this year. Still, Tales from the Borderlands is my favorite of all the recent Telltale games. I love the old Sam & Max adventure games they made, as well as the first season of The Walking Dead. But lately, I've grown tired of their endless attraction to dark, depressing subject matter. Tales from the Borderlands is a great return to form and comedy for Telltale. It showcases their excellent writing talent and is fun in a way that so many of their games very purposefully are not. Hell, it even gives me the slightest sliver of hope for the possibility of a new Sam & Max. Blizzard's approach to StarCraft II has been odd, to say the least. 3 almost entirely separate games released over the span of 5 years, but all of them named StarCraft II, continuing the same story. Like Heart of the Swarm before it, Legacy of the Void adds a few twists to the formula, but it's basically still more StarCraft II. And while that doesn't get it a spot on my top 10 list, Blizzard still knows how to make a damn good RTS. And since there aren't that many of them left these days, a well-crafted one, even if we've basically seen it before, is very much welcome. Being the spiritual successor to Amnesia, Soma had a lot to live up to. And I think a lot of people that were expecting another game similar to Amnesia came away rather disappointed. Instead of the almost non-stop heart-pounding action that typified Amnesia, Soma, while it still has a few of those moments here and there, is very much more focused on existential dread and borderline philosophical discussions of what it means to be human. While the game's protagonist becomes extremely grating by the end of the game, it was still a delightfully terrifying 8 hours that I would happily go through again. I should probably preface this by saying I love Persona 4. A whole lot. I'm perfectly willing to admit that the enormous amount of fan service in Dancing All Night is basically aimed squarely at me and people like me, and that it was extremely successful. But Dancing All Night is also a very well-made rhythm game, in the vein of old-school games like Parappa, games that don't get made that often anymore, other than the occasional Hatsune Miku title. The music is great, it plays well, and, well, most of all, most importantly for me, it's more Persona 4. Assassin's Creed Unity sucked. A lot. Which was really disappointing after how much I enjoyed Black Flag. The awful frame rate just added to something that was already a subpar introduction for the franchise's first true entry on current generation hardware. But now, we're back on the roller coaster of quality, because Assassin's Creed Syndicate is a very well-made evolution for the series. While the boat combat that helped make Black Flag so good is nowhere to be found, the changes to the basic traversal mechanics found within the grappling hook tool that the game adds, as well as the nicely retuned combat, and some of the best main characters the game has seen since Ezio, make this game well worth checking out, at least as long as you haven't gotten tired of the Assassin's Creed formula. For a console ostensibly on its last legs, the Wii U actually had a pretty great year. Games like Mario Maker and Xenoblade Chronicles X really helped to make me feel like it was actually worth keeping my Wii U connected to my TV. But the game I found myself going back to again and again was Splatoon. In the race to create in-depth progression systems and layer on mode after mode to compete with the likes of Call of Duty and Battlefield, a lot of modern shooters have lost their eye for innovation. Splatoon, however, puts innovation first. Its core mechanic of spreading ink around the battlefield is remarkably fun, to the point of where killing enemies actually kinda takes a back seat. Add to that the regular introduction of new modes, weapons, and maps, all for free, and you have a game that's well maintained and a hell of a lot of fun. Speaking of innovation, Rocket League is another incredible example of mixing things up in the multiplayer space. Now the idea seems so simple: have cars play soccer. But the way it's implemented within Rocket League, with a surprising amount of mechanical complexity hidden right underneath the relatively simple surface, makes Rocket League a game that is extremely hard to put down once you get the hang of it. At first glance, Westorado seems to be yet another pixel art indie game. But beneath the surface layer that it shares with so many of its peers lies an incredibly robust system of choices that allow the player to make their way through the game in just about any way they could imagine. You can kill anyone you want, do anything you want, and the game can end in so many different ways. It's kind of amazing. The game is a fantastic look at what could be done with narrative in a condensed format. But as a gameplay experience, it isn't always the best. But it's still absolutely worth a look. The open world space game has always fascinated me. Freelancer, Elite, the X series. I've even spent a few stints in EVE Online. So every time someone puts a new one of those out, I always try to take a look at it. And while Rebel Galaxy isn't maybe as good as some of those games I just mentioned, it differs itself in ways that make it extremely enjoyable, like the Black Flag-esque combat system. That combat system, combined with an amazing Firefly-style soundtrack, layered on top of the usual trading and mission running, plus the thing's so cheap and much easier to pick up and play than so many games like it, it makes it far easier to recommend to just about anyone, not just crazy people like myself. Realistically, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a pretty rudimentary sequel to 2013's reboot of the franchise, but it's been long enough and the formula is still new enough that I was more than willing to go back to it. This game's free-roaming areas are a bit more open, the puzzles to be found within the tombs are a bit more satisfying, and the overall game just feels that little bit tighter. It feels more polished overall. Because here's the thing. I liked the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot, I liked what it was trying to do, but Rise of the Tomb Raider actually manages to do it. So, with those 10 additional games, I do believe my personal Game of the Year coverage for the end of 2015 is done. Thanks to everybody who watched my channel this year. I'm still going to continue putting out videos every Monday and Friday for the foreseeable future. If you have any suggestions for any kind of video I should do next, any kind of suggestions for my usual features, retro reviews, or in case you missed it, be sure to leave a comment. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.